everyone. Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very, very special guest here for the show today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
Hi, I'm Pastor Bob Thibodeau. I'm calling from our studio here in Baltimore, Maryland.
Wow, it's amazing to have you as a guest. I just wanted to go ahead and dig into your past leading up into your present.
Amen.
However you want to start speaking about your past, you can right now.
All right. Well, straight out of high school, I joined the military. I did 12 years in the Army and as a cavalry officer, ended up as a cavalry officer, got out, had my own business for 6-7 years and really just got bored with it and decided to enter law enforcement and retired from that in 2011. I started ministry in 2009 where I was on the radio. We had our own online program that got picked up by a Christian AM radio station conglomerate based out of South Carolina. And we were on nationwide AM radio for a year or so. And when we left that, we started our own online radio station called evangelismradio.com. It started on October 4th, 2010. Been going strong 24/7 ever since. We got some major ministries on there, but we cater to the smaller churches and ministries that can't afford the big radio budgets. And, that ended up having us go into podcasting. And that started just as a way to interview the broadcasters, but grew into so much more. Now, our Kingdom Crossroads podcast recently published its 1,500th episode in just 6 years.
That's hard.
And,
yes.
We're full-time online ministry. That's what we do now.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten Billy Graham on there, or did he expire already?
No, he moved on to heaven before we started.
Oh wow! God bless his soul.
We've had Michael Brown, David Barton. We had some major ministries on there, but we haven't. Billy Graham, we missed.
Yeah. Tell me about the accident that happened to you and how God brought you closer to doing the AM podcast and radio station.
Amen. Yeah, we had, as I said, the military and then the law enforcement. Everything was going great. I was enjoying my career. In Baltimore, our department was responsible mainly for the highway patrol aspect. And on October 7th, 2007, October 7th, May 12th, 2007, tropical storm had blown in, and we were working the midnight shift at that time. And we had a 3 or 4 car pile up. I was out working the accident scene, and someone ignored a flare pattern and bumped me in the process. And that started a whole series of medical procedures from 2007 to 2012, 13. I had a total about 33 different medical procedures done. I did get 2 new knees out of the deal, so I'm like half a bionic man anyway. But yeah, it was the time between the two was, and before they wanted to go for full blown, things degraded to the point where they had to replace the knees. But I had to have a back procedure done, hips and knees and feet, legs, and we might have a procedure and then 2-3 weeks on therapy, physical therapy, and then back on light duty for a couple of weeks and back on full duty, and a couple months later going for the next procedure. And that's the way my life was for a few years. And they decided, we might have to retire you if you don't get better. And by this time I'm 50 years old, and I'm praying, Lord, what is it you want me to do? I'm getting too old to keep starting careers all over. And I was a department chaplain. I was a chaplain for our department for the FOP and all that, but I didn't have my own website, or was not technically inclined, put it like that. And I went to a ministers' conference after one of the medical procedures. I was off for a couple of weeks. So I went to a ministers' conference in Texas on crutches, and I was sitting about 4 or 5 rows back, dead center, and they were getting ready to wrap up the morning session. And the speaker was up there talking, and that had been my prayer for a couple months. What do you want me to do? And this morning, about 11:30 or so, I said, they're getting ready to wrap up for lunch. Someone leaned forward, sounded like from the row behind me, and said, you need to start your own weekly 30-minute online radio program.
What if they just ran out after saying that? I'm just joking. Go ahead. I know the story.
Well, I said, the speaker's standing right there. So I turned around to see who said it, and there's nobody there. And I was like, okay, that's weird. And my technical know-how at the time, I had to have, this is absolute 100% truth. I had to have help check an email at work. Okay. I was not, so this is like speaking Greek to me. I had no clue what is going on here. And so I'm like, okay, try the spirit. Yeah, try the spirits. Okay, the Bible says try the spirits. Lord, I'm sorry, but if this is you, I have no clue what you just said. I don't even know what it means. I'm sorry, but I'm going to need a confirmation if this is really you. Well, like I said, the speaker's getting ready to close up, the morning session. And he's up there and he says, so in other words, if God tells you to do something, you got to do it. He can tell you start your own radio program and you got to do it. I'm like, oh, no way. That so affected me that when they broke to go next door to the cater lunch, I went out to the car to call my wife. I said, you won't believe what just happened. And but that's how I got started in online radio.
How did you take it in phase one? How was phase? Was it harder than doing it now?
Well, remember, I knew nothing. I mean, my technical know-how was call my son-in-law. How do I turn this computer on again? That's where I was at, right? And so a few months, I came back home from that. And I'd been promoted, transferred to a different detachment, so I had a little farther drive, more responsibility, and forgot all about it until the next procedure was coming up in about 2 months. And they said, this time when you come back, we're sending you for a workup. So my prayer was, Lord, what is it you want me to do? Because I had forgotten all about that. I'd gotten so busy. And this time the answer is very clear in my spirit. What did I tell you to do? I don't remember. So with my prayer journal, start backing up through the pages, and there it was, November 8, 2008, stars all over the page, highlighted in yellow, so I wouldn't forget. Okay, start my own 30-minute online weekly radio program. No idea what to do, but I just had another procedure done, so I couldn't walk around very well, so I'm sitting in front of the computer. I said, well, let me go to Who Does Know, the great savior, Google. And figured out how to do it.
I love it. Go ahead. I'm listening.
So my first radio program was on a flip cell phone. That's how far back this goes. A flip cell phone on a free website. Like, I didn't have a website, right? But I started getting the following. And I was like, okay, well, this is pretty cool. Okay, I can deal with this. This will work. And that's when, about 6 months into this, that I got approached by Wilkins Communications, that Christian radio station conglomerate, and they said, hey, we heard your podcast. I didn't even know what a podcast was, let alone I had one, right? And they said, we heard your podcast. I think it'd be a good fit for our audience. Would you like to be on nationwide Christian radio? I was like, yeah, sure. This is the Lord's doing. This is marvelous. Yeah, let's do it. And I found out I had to pay for it. Just these little tiny details I'm learning as I go. But the normal retirement process for our department for a medical retirement was 12 to 18 months. I was okay. So I was on 4 major markets for an entire year. About 6 months into that, I got a letter in the mail that said, congratulations on your retirement. You're not living on half your income. And I got this big radio budget. And that's when I was praying, what do I do now? But in order to be on the radio, since with the technological advancements and all that, I was on radio way back in 1993, 94 when I lived in Texas, and I had to take the cassette tapes to the radio station and drop them off, right? And so now they say, well, you just send it to us online, load it to the server, and we'll, okay, how do I do that? So I had to teach myself sound quality, time management, editing files, loading servers. I had to do all of that my own in order to get the radio broadcast out. So that was my education and broadcast ministry, was live Christian radio, nationwide AM radio. And like I said, when I got that letter in the mail, said, you're now living on half your income, I was going to honor the contract, but I wasn't going to renew it. That's when I said, okay, Lord, what do you want us to do now? And you had me go through this for a reason. What is it? And I was led to start our own online Christian radio station, evangelismradio.com, and make it so affordable no pastor could say they couldn't do it. And the Lord gave me a list of 10 things this radio station was supposed to do. And basically it's centered around operating as a traditional radio station, but online. Back then they didn't do that. You didn't have radio stations broadcasting over the airwaves and online. This is just right at the beginning of all this. And because I went, I said, how do we do this? And he gave me a list of 10 things it was supposed to do. I called it my 10 commandments for radio. And I says, live broadcasters be able to have phone call-ins, pre-recorded programming and all that stuff. And it centered, the major sticking point was the instructions I had to go live, set it up so anybody can go live in any time zone in the world and not step on anybody else's program and not have anybody else step on that program. If they have an internet connection, they should be able to log in and go live. And nobody was doing this, because I went back to the great Savior, Google again, and trying to find somebody to pattern ourselves at. Nobody was doing this. Not one radio station. iHeartRadio had just started, and they were only doing music. Right. So my son-in-law, he's our IT director. He worked for Apple at the time. And he said, well, let's build it. So we did. And that's where October 4th, 2010, we launched evangelismradio.com. And it's been going live 24/7 ever since. We started with one broadcaster, me. We started with one listener, me. My wife didn't even listen to the radio station. And now it's grown where we, at one time, we had 70 broadcasters sending us files. We're about 46 or something now. But, we have listeners in the thousands every month. I mean, we track listening hours pretty closely. And usually it's anywhere between 3,500 and 5,500 listening hours per month that people are listening to our radio station. So it's.
Wow, Pastor Bob, I am so proud of you. I know you get that from a lot of people, but I'm very, very proud of you. My next question to you is, you said that you had listeners in the thousands, so I won't say that question, but what I want to know is where do you see yourself going in the future with this, Pastor Bob?
Heaven.
I love it.
Because I plan on doing this till Jesus comes or I go there, but we're constantly looking at ways of improving. Okay, the radio station is going to continue. The podcast is going to continue. Now I went from one podcast. Our Kingdom Crossroads podcast started just as a way for me to interview the broadcasters, so that people get their backstory, what they did and how they started and all that stuff. And I got approached, and that started in end of 2017, right in that area. And in December 2017, I got approached by a publicist, said, hey, I got a Christian author releasing a book. You want to do an interview? Yeah, sure. Why not? And that changed the total dynamics of the podcast, because all the pastors I was interviewing, they were, tell us your story. Well, I was lost, got born again, got called, went to school, and I'm a pastor. I was lost, got born again, got called, went to school, and I'm a pastor. I was lost, got born again, got called. Get the idea? And now, we do authors and recording artists and business CEOs and nonprofit leaders and missionaries and, the whole gamut. If they're a believer, people that have their own radio program like you, if they're a believer, we want to talk to them and put them on the air. And since 2018, like I said, we're now in our 6th year. We just published our 15 episode 1,510, I think, as of today. So we're over 1,500 episodes. I've done well over 1,000 interviews, probably about 1,200 interviews in those 6 years as well.
Can I ask you a question? Have you contacted or tried to contact Joel Osteen, or is that like too deep?
I reached out one time, and they said they talked to him about it, but I never heard back. And
Oh,
I'm so busy. I have a real hard time to follow it up. Just this year, beginning this year, 2024, we finally got to the point where I couldn't do all the work myself. Up till now, I've been doing it all. I've been doing all the contacts, all the emails, setting up websites, doing the interview prep and scheduling and editing and loading servers. And, this year it got to the point where I could no longer manage it all myself. So I'm training my assistants and doing this type of thing. So sometime this year, they're getting the routine down now, and they're doing pretty good. So probably sometime this summer we'll be entering a campaign to try it. Okay, let's reach out and talk to people. And I do have one assistant that is doing that on LinkedIn right now, reaching out to people to get them on the program. But this is the training phase, I guess you could say, for that.
Once again, what are the names of the A-listers that have came to your show that are like pastors and everything?
We've interviewed Michael Brown a couple times, David Barton's ministry, Jerry Savelle Ministries. He just recently passed on. Oh, Lord. Andrew Womack. I talked to him. And matter of fact, he's got a radio program. John MacArthur has a program on our radio station as well. And like I said, several, Joe Schimmel, I just interviewed him for like the fourth time. He's out in California. He, back in the 1980s, I seen a video that came out that he produced the documentary called They Sold Their Soul for Rock and Roll. And he went in, he used to be in the rock and roll thing. And the satanic involvement and all that. And, then I had an opportunity. He reached out to be on the podcast, and I recognized the name right away. Because I remember the video from, 40 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so we've been close since then. I think this is the third or fourth time I've interviewed him. He was just on prior to me coming onto this program.
Another thing, I'll talk to you after the show about it, but so real quick, if you had to give a piece of advice out there to an entrepreneur that knows what they want to do in podcast and or radio to merge them two together, what kind of advice would you give them, sir?
Step by step. Don't try and take the whole apple and swallow it at one time. Take small bites. If you're going to turn a podcast into a radio program, that's easy. But you still got to take it one step at a time. Get the podcast where it's systemized. If you're doing interviews like I do, you want the process to be not time consuming, because it's going to be time consuming enough doing everything anyway by yourself. So you want to set up a system where people can reach out to you, click a link, book a time, give you the information you need, where you don't have to keep doing this email stuff back and forth. Because if email tag wasted a whole lot of time when I was first starting out, because I'd send an email, hey, would you like to be on a podcast? And then I go about my day. They respond back, yeah, sure. How do I do it? The next day I respond back with, well, let's book a time. The next day they respond back with, yeah, okay, what's good for you? Well, how's Wednesday the 10th at 11:30 or Thursday the 12th at 9 a.m.? Then the next day they respond, no, neither one of those work for me. A whole week's gone by.
Yeah.
So
I know
now
what you're saying.
I got the systems in place, and that's what one of the first things I train people to do, because, well, I want to, I'll be on the podcast. How do I do it? Here's the link. Click. They pick whatever day and time works for them. If it shows on my schedule, I'm available. Boom. Set it up, and as soon as they book it, it sends them the information form. Fill this out so I can prepare for the interview. My hands are off, and all that comes out. They get the reminder emails to come on the show, just like you did, just like I did here. And, that just comes, it just systemizes the whole process, saves everybody a whole lot of time because they know what's required. I'm getting the information I need in order to do an effective interview. And then if you're going to put that on radio, be sure you have good sound quality. You don't want to talk. I do not recommend talking through earbuds and stuff like that, where you get this big echo effect and all this other stuff's going on. You don't have to invest in an expensive setup. I tell people, do not do that. Use the equipment you have, but make sure it's good. You don't want to just talk on a laptop microphone and, the dog barks in the living room and it's picked up on the microphone and things like that. You make sure that you have the ability to sound professional, because if people are listening, they hear trucks going by and, the neighbor cutting grass, because of, you have a $10 microphone, they're going to turn you off and never come back. So you have to be professional in everything you do. But it's simple to do, but just take small bite-sized processes in the process, because when you start off and you do what's right because it's right and do it right, that then becomes your habit. And it's a whole lot easier than doing 75 episodes with, just your cell phone doing the recording and then say, okay, I need to upgrade. And how do I do this? And then you got mistakes and you're experimenting on how to use stuff and things like that. So if you start off the way it's supposed to be done, instead of just, I can set this up in 30 minutes. And I got my own podcast. Yeah, you do. But is anybody going to listen? Because when you're first starting off, it's hard to get listeners.
Mm-hmm.
And when you first start off, if what they're seeing or hearing sounds like it's cheap, put it like that, they're not coming back. So, but again, don't spend thousands of dollars to get a professional setup until you know this is something that's going to work and that you're going to continue, because otherwise you just got an expensive hat rack sitting there on your desktop.
I have another question. So you told us the basic ins and outs of setting up a radio station, but I'm pretty sure you're with the FCC, right?
Nope.
You're not?
Nope.
Okay, so it's like an online type thing.
Yep. Online. Yep.
Okay. Do you know how to go to the sector of the online FCC radio webs? Do you know how to work with those guys? Have you ever worked with them before to get your own radio station back in the day?
At one point in time, we were looking at purchasing our own radio station.
Okay.
And I went to a couple that were within driving distance, 2-3 hours away, that were for sale. And what I found out was, if you don't have at least $250,000 in your pocket, they don't want to talk to you.
Oh.
Now, you can go to a local radio station and say, hey, I'd like to have my broadcast put on your station. They'll talk to you about that. But it's also, we have one broadcaster here in Baltimore. He has a 30-minute weekly program on the local radio station. They charge him $800 a month, okay, for 30 minutes, one time a week. And, when our radio station, remember, the command I had was make it so affordable no pastor could say they can't do it. I was at a pastor's meeting or something. He came and said, how much would it be for? And I told him, I said, well, depends on how long your program is and how many days a week you want to be on. He said, well, I'm on this radio station here 30 minutes a week. I said, what would that cost? I said, I don't know, $15 a month. Wait a minute, $15 a month? I said, yeah. Well, what if I wanted to be on every day? 7 days a week, 30 minutes, $75 a month. He says, I'm paying them $800 a month for one 30-minute broadcast. I said, I'm not them. They're in it to make money, and it's expensive to operate a radio station. It really is. Well, I found that out when I was looking to buy them. Buy one. It's very expensive to operate, and they have to have $10,000 in cash in their bank account at all times, in case that light bulb goes out on the top of the radio tower, because FCC and FAA require that light to be working at all times. And if it burns out, they have 24 hours to get it fixed. Otherwise, it's like fines that rack up every day. So, and there's specialized companies that can climb that 800 feet up in the tower to change out a light bulb.
You know a lot. You know a lot. That's crazy. Okay, so okay. I had to know that because I probably wanted to do it, but I don't have $250,000. I'll probably ask them if I can give them $25 to do a one-time show or something. I don't know, but how do you feel that radio would change in the next 10 years?
When I started, nobody was online. No radio stations were online. Now, just about every radio station offers the free streaming service as well. That was, in the last, from 2009 to now. So that's what, 13, 14, 15, almost 14, 15 years. So 15 years from now, I have no clue. I mean, they'll probably be streaming video on radio. A lot of them do. You can go into their radio stream. You'll see into the studio where they're talking and stuff like that. That'll probably be normal. I don't know. I know that our radio station, we're not alone anymore. Before, like I said, we hit number one in the world because we were the only Christian radio station doing it. I mean, we shot up the ranks so fast because we were the only ones doing it. And now we're not number one in the world anymore because the competition is so fierce and there's so many. But I don't even know what our ranking is, to tell you the truth. I haven't checked in 6-7 years. But when we first started out, I was looking at it every day. I got screenshots where number one. But because
how has you being close to God got you close with people that you've interviewed using podcasts and radio?
Well, these people are looking. Let's just talk about a ministry. Andrew Womack or what. They're already well known. Okay, so when I approach them for an interview, to them it's a distraction, I guess you could say. Okay, like why? What do I need to do that for? But you get someone a pastor, that may have had a church for 10 years, and because of the pandemic, put it like this: when I was prior to the pandemic, I'd approach churches to come on our radio station. Well, I don't know about all that radio stuff. I don't know. Had some, they wanted to do it. Yeah, sure. But 85% like, I haven't got time for any of that. I don't need to do that. When the pandemic hit, my phone rung off the hook.
I believe you.
They're like, hey, you still doing that online stuff? Yeah. How can I do that? And so our business grew during the pandemic simply because I already had the training in place. I already had the step-by-step instructions in place. Mm-hmm. So I just, okay, well, and I said, I can't do it. I can't have anybody in the church with me, but I want to do a Sunday sermon for everybody to log in and see. How do I do it? And I said, I can't set anything up because I'm not technically inclined. I said, well, you got a cell phone, right? Yeah. Say, okay, I'll send you the instructions. You can do a Facebook Live right there on your cell phone. And, push the button, go live, go preach, get done, off. Let's make it simple like that. And that's what we did. I taught a lot of churches how to do that so they can continue ministering to their people. But yeah, it's how online is going to change in the future. I don't know. I really don't.
It's okay. How has your journey grown, and how will you try to implement possibly new innovative things, last question, for the future?
Well, when I started, I could set up my entire week in about 4 hours on a Sunday afternoon. And now, until I hired my assistants, I was working 12 and 14-hour days, 7 days a week, just to keep up with everything. Okay. Simply because when you have that many broadcasters sending you files, you're doing all the work yourself, and the interviews and scheduling the interviews, getting the information, preparing for the interview, conducting the interview, editing the interview, loading the interviews, sharing the interviews. It's a very time-consuming process. One of the reasons I instituted this system that I told you about was to eliminate all that work from me. I now have the ability, when I get ready to share and publish the interview, I got a way to blast it all out on all the social media channels, on our pages and stuff automatically. I don't have to go to everyone and do all this crazy stuff. It's all set up. The radio station I have to load. The podcast, now I have somebody that loads the podcasts for me. So, like I said, we have made the progress to the point now where it's becoming easier for me, which allows me, because I've been asked for the past 5 years, how can I start my own podcast? And at first I was like, oh, this is what you got to do, stuff like that. And I just, give them the information. Then I made like a check sheet, checklist that they can go down. And the instructions were, follow this checklist in sequence. When you finish, you got a podcast, on iTunes type thing. And I send those out. And then people, I'm stuck on this one. And so I jump on a Zoom call or something, help them out. And pretty soon I found myself, I'm helping people 4 or 5 days a week. So that had me create a training program, so I can just do that. And that took more time now, out of my day. And now, people are like, how can I promote the podcast? How can I, find people to do interviews with and things like that? So what we've done is we've created a couple of platforms that answer all those questions. And the most recent, our latest edition is called faithcaster.org. And that helps people, start a podcast, promote their podcast. There's a lot of places you can share your information if you're looking to do interviews, or you can share what you want to interview people about, reach out and find people who want to be interviewed. Well, we do the same thing, but for the Christian community instead of the world at large. And that's faithcaster.org. And because the training that I was providing was taking so much of my time, I just started loading the recordings that I had to what I call our Faithcaster Academy. And that's faithcasteracademy.com. And that, for a membership fee, very cheap. I'll just say is $17 a month. $17 a month. You get all of the, I guess no, that's not right. $27 a month, I think it is. Anyway, you get all the training. You just push the video button and it teaches you what to do and things like that. There's resources on there, how to promote your podcast and different things like that. Again, taking the workload off of me, because I got enough to do as it is. And that's what it's all about, is getting the information out there for those that want it. And then if you have a question, you're stuck on a problem, you get in touch with me and we jump on a Zoom call, something like that. And that'll, we can, oh yeah, okay, click that button. There you go. But, so it's by systemizing the processes, and now I got some assistants helping me. That frees my time up now to help other people do what they want to do as well. I can't hear you.
I hate to have you go, but how can the people reach you? My apologies.
Oh, that's fine. Faithcaster.org. The Kingdom Crossroads podcast is KCRpodcast.com. If you're interested in looking at the training stuff that's on the academy, is faithcasteracademy.com.
Is there anything you would like to add, Pastor Bob, before we leave? If not, it's okay.
Yeah. Well, when you're dealing in the online community, you have the capability of impacting people you will never meet this side of heaven. We have listeners on our radio station, like I said, from 167 nations. We have listeners in Iran. We have listeners in Afghanistan and Pakistan. It's before you'd have to, if I wanted to minister, let's say in Africa, in Libya or Kenya, something like that, I'd have to save up the money, book tickets, travel over there, and you're not going to stay there for one day and come back. You're going to be there for a couple weeks. So you got all those expenses involved, all the travel expenses. I minister in a Bible school. Person that I went to Bible school with, his ministry is India, Pakistan, and that area like that. And he has a Bible school in Pakistan. And I minister once a year in that Bible school for him. And I do it right here, just like I'm talking to you today. You know, I don't have to travel over there. And that's what the online world will allow you to do. You'll be impacting people you'll never meet this side of heaven. But what you share with them is impacting thousands of people over in that section of the world. You know, we've done some research and found out that a third of our listeners come from what's called the 1040 window. That's the area that encompasses basically the Middle East. Okay, that's 40% of the unreached people groups live in that 10-degree latitude zone right there. And you know, that's a third of our listeners to the radio station come from that area of the world. So we are reaching the world with the gospel, and you can do the same thing through podcasting, through online radio, and all that.
Thank you so much for joining my show. Stay on the line. Thank you all who watched. You take care, be safe, and I'll see you guys another time.